will provide you with the recording. So, welcome, everybody. My name is Nikelia Gregor-Karai. I am the coordinator for the Caribbean Climate Responsive Agriculture Forum. And today we have some very interesting topics from you, some interesting collaborations. And so just to get us started, if you could possibly just for us to get an idea where you're from.
I'm not hearing anything.
Can persons hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing.
Yes, I'm hearing.
I'm hearing.
Please check your settings of your computer. Okay. So just to get us started, you could either rename yourself by adding your country towards the end to give us an idea where you are from, as we have persons from across the region. I am from Dominica. You could all, please, if you could mute your mic as we go in through the sessions to reduce on the interruption of the presenters. Please feel free to also open up your camera so we could see you if that's possible for you. In the Zoom, there is the raise hand function. When we reach to the question and discussion part, you could use the raise hand function and we allow you to speak, or you could put your question in the chat. The session is being recorded and that recording will be shared with you, as well as the PowerPoint presentations will be shared with you. We do have interpretation available, as this is a collaboration between the French and English territories. And so please go on the symbol interpretation. And if you're English, please select the English channel. And if you're French, please select the French channel. Hi, Aline, I see that you have a question. Do you have a question? Aline, I'm seeing your hand raised. Do you have a question? Okay, so I guess she's testing it. So we use that function when we get to the question and answer component. And you could simply just put your flag where you're from in the chat for us to see where we are from in the region. And so welcome. And my name is Nikelia Gregor-Karai. I am a technical specialist in soil and water with ECA. And as I mentioned, I am the coordinator of the Caribbean Climate Responsive Agriculture Forum. I am attached to ECA's Agricultural Climate Action and Sustainability Program. And so the key objective of the CCRAF, as we term it, the CCRAF or the CCRAF, is that we want to raise awareness and we want to use that and share knowledge on climate smart agricultural practices. Not only that, but practices within the whole agriculture sector to build the sustainability of the sector. And as such, as I mentioned, this is being broadcasted and persons from across the region, from Belize all the way to Guyana, Trinidad, Dominica, St. Lucia, the Bahamas, Jamaica. And today we have with us the French territories of Martinique and Guadeloupe. And so what we want to do, we want to build a community of engaged persons at both a regional and a national level. And as such, bringing persons together, we want to promote enhanced coordination and collaboration of the stakeholders within the agriculture sector. But very important for us is that we want the knowledge that we share, the information that we share through these webinars, through these interactions, we want to translate them to practical action on the ground for us to see the results and for us to better adapt to the impacts of climate change. And also, we also have the financial component of things to think of, the social component of it, not only the climate context. And so today, the topic that we will be discussing and natural approaches to crop protection and soil conservation. And this is being done under the Interreg CANET Adapt project. And of course, Mr. Roach will give you a bit more details on there. And we do have a number of partners helping to implement this project. And so the CCRAF is supporting the implementation of these two webinars under this project. And so today we have with us, myself, will moderate the session. Mr. Jerome Roach, who is the Regional Director of ADIM in Guadeloupe, will provide us with some brief remarks. We also have with us Mr. Greg Rawlins, who is a representative for the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture, ICA, for the Eastern Caribbean states. That includes St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent, Dominica, Antigua, and Barbuda, and St. Kitts. And so our key presenters we have with us today, we have Mr. Nelson Laville, who is from Dominica, and he's a plant pathologist, and he represents Phytosol Plus Inc. And he will be talking to us on natural approaches for crop protection. And we have with us Mr. Damien Adoja, who is a regenerative agroecological specialist of New Flower Regenerative Garden from St. Lucia, and he will be speaking to us on natural approaches for soil conservation. And so with that, I would like to thank you all for joining us today, and I will pass on to you, Mr. Roche, to give us a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikilia. Merci beaucoup, Nikilia. Bonjour à toutes et à tous.
Thank you very much and good morning to all. I'm very happy to see that we are very numerous this morning to talk about agriculture and adaptation to climate change. And I am Jérôme Roche. I'm the regional director of the French Agency for Ecology Transition. I'm based in Guadeloupe, and we also have several other agencies in Martinique and on the French Guiana, on the American continent. This is a nice opportunity to pursue our cooperation and our partnership with the ICA that I thank. And you can understand that we have a project financed by the European Union and the Interreg program, which is entitled Connect Adapt. And the aim is to adapt our territories to the impact of climate change, especially on the agricultural and tourism sectors. And in the framework of this program, we have a partnership with the ICA, but also other institutions like the CARDI, Unite Caribbean, and Synergy, an association based in Guadeloupe. And this is a joint effort that we are trying to do, and we have close aims. So ICA and CCRAF, CCRAF's aim, and it explains the fact that today we have a joint seminar, a joint webinar. So within our network, we have the objective of organizing this type of seminar, but also we want to prepare a study trip to St. Lucia. And so we want to continue to build this network. And I'm very happy that this network is at the same time for French-speaking territories, but also for English-speaking territories. I think we need to build these bridges between our territories. I won't be longer. Lola Turpin is the task officer for this project, and she's online, and she's chief of this project, and you can ask any questions about the follow-up of our joint works. And I really want to thank warmly the ICA teams, the ADEM teams, and also the presenters, because today we will have some very interesting presentations. So thank you to all, and have a nice morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roche, for this analysis of what the project is about and what are some of the outputs and expectations there. Thank you so much for that. And now we will have with us Mr. Rawlins, who will also give us some brief remarks. Mr. Rawlins, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Natalia. And let me first start by wishing everyone a very pleasant good morning and recognizing Mr. Jerome Roche from the head of the French Agency for Ecological Transition, ADEM, and the other colleagues from ADEM who are with us. I also want to recognize the facilitators, the presenters, and thank them for taking the time out to share during this webinar, and all the participants who are joining us from across the Caribbean. I actually saw a wide range of countries participating, including the Cayman Islands. It's very encouraging that we have this wide range participation. It demonstrates an interest in the subjects. ICA is extremely pleased to partner with ADEM and the other partners under the Interreg-funded Carnet Adapt project to host this webinar on natural approaches to crop protection and soil conservation. This is indeed the second collaboration we've had with the French Agency for Ecological Transition, ADEM. We did have a webinar late last year on tools for resilient agriculture in the Caribbean region, which was very well attended and very successful as well. So we welcome this opportunity to once again partner with them and the others, but this time under the Interreg-funded project. ICA is also extremely pleased to be a partner under this project, recognizing that the project seeks to build improved networking and information exchange among practitioners and stakeholders in the islands of the Eastern Caribbean and beyond, as it relates to climate change adaptation and improved resilience. But I wanted to say a few words quickly about today's webinar topic. I think we will all agree, and I'm sure that's why we have such good participation, that today's topics are fundamentally important to Caribbean agriculture and Caribbean societies. Natural approaches to crop protection and soil conservation addresses two fundamental issues. First, the fact that we need to take steps to address crop loss due to disease damage, which is a major threat and challenge that we face, particularly given changing weather conditions and so on. And secondly, given the terrain and our systems or our landscapes in many of the countries, particularly in the Eastern Caribbean, the hilly terrains, we are very, very susceptible to soil loss, and conservation measures are therefore extremely critical. And tying this all together is the focus on natural approaches, recognizing that we need to adopt more natural approaches to ensure that we safeguard our environment, we safeguard the biodiversity, we safeguard and achieve some level of agroecological balance as we pursue our actions. I don't need to emphasize the importance of natural approaches to crop protection. It has serious implications for our health, our food safety, and therefore this is of fundamental importance. And secondly, the issue of soil conservation and maintaining our soils. We cannot have a viable agriculture and a viable natural resource environment without healthy soils, and therefore soil conservation and natural approaches are going to be extremely important moving forward. We at ICA have had some recent experience under the Caribbean Biodiversity Funded project that looked at the focus of better grass as a nature-based solution and a bioengineering tool. We have looked at this, and we are very much engaged in working in a number of countries on this initiative of nature-based solutions, and we look forward to continuing our work in this area. So let me close by just, first of all, by again thanking ADEM and the partners for working closely with us to put this webinar together. I want to thank Nikilia and the team in ICA for pulling this together under the Caribbean Climate Responsible Agriculture Forum, which continues to be a very effective mechanism for information sharing and networking. And also to thank the facilitators in particular, presenters who have joined us to share. We really appreciate your participation. And I do hope that today's webinar will be of extremely useful to everyone who's participating. It will stimulate dialogue, stimulate conversations, and lead to some practical applications that Nikilia would have emphasized on the ground that will improve both our crop protection towards increased productivity and increased food security, and also our preservation and conservation of our soils and natural environments. I thank you very much for the opportunity. Over.
Thanks, Greg, for that summary and that breaking into the topics that we are delving into today. And so today, first up, we're going to have with us Mr. Nelson Laville, who is from Dominican, who is a plant pathologist with Phytosol Plus Inc. But before Nelson comes on, I'm going to launch a poll on your screen. And if you could just complete them, you just click on it on your screen and complete the poll. Noemi, and for those who are co-hosts, please do not do anything. You will not be able to answer the poll. Thank you. So everyone on else, if you could complete the poll for us, please, for us to get an idea of your knowledge on the topics that we will be delving into today. Thank you. And so we will have with us Mr. Nelson Laville. You can go ahead, Nelson's.
Good morning, everyone. Pleased to be here. My name is Nelson Laville. I am a plant pathologist, and I am representing today Phytosol Plus Inc. It is a registered company that promotes sustainable plant protection or plant health. And what we have been pushing for a few years now is what is called integrated crop management. And as we go along during this presentation, I will introduce you to what is integrated crop management and how we could use natural approaches to ensure that we reduce the use of toxic crop protection products and, of course, maintain the environment, a healthy environment. We also promote what we say as stewardship of the environment. So thank you for being here. And I do hope that at the end of this presentation, you would have received information that would help you transform your production system in a sustainable manner. All right, so the presentation will take the following outline today. We will speak, we'll just introduce the topic. We'll define what is plant health, and we'll also define what is crop protection. We will look at common pests that can be found in your farm. We will speak of the interaction between plants and pests. We will touch on what is integrated crop management. And then we will go into the natural approaches, as the topic says. We'll also look at easy ways that you could.
I'm not hearing anything.
Am I not being heard?
I'm not hearing anything.
I am hearing you.
I'm
I
here.
think
I'm
Elizabeth
hearing you
and Joel,
loudly.
please check your settings because we could hear. Head Nelson, sorry.
I was hearing all the while and I didn't change anything.
You could hear now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Okay. Go ahead, Nelson.
Can you hear me? Because you
Yes,
may
I
be able to hear Nick earlier, but not me. Yes, they said loud and clear. Great. So
But I'm not hearing him.
oh,
Same here.
Please make sure that you go to the English channel so you will be able to hear. We have French and we have English. Please go to the correct channel so you will hear. If you're not in the correct channel, you will not hear. So please go to the English channel. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Nelson.
okay. So we will look also at easy ways to do crop protection products at your home and to get solutions. At the end of the presentation, we will receive some questions and possible discussions on what was discussed. Next slide, please. Good. So crop protection and plant health. Usually we confuse the two or we use them synonymously. However, crop protection speaks of practices to protect your yield against pests, weeds, plant diseases, and other organisms that may cause damage to your crops, your agricultural crops. Whereas plant health is the overarching term that speaks to emerging risk, right, which may influence the health of a plant and the ecosystem in which it resides. It has the potential to contribute to a wider goal of ensuring sustainability. So when we speak of plant health, we speak of soil health, environmental health, or ecosystem health, and we also speak of the nutrition of the plant, because deficiencies could be plant health issues. And we also speak of what is within crop protection. So plant health includes all of those. When we speak of plant health and crop protection, there are some major organisms that will affect your plant: fungus, bacteria, nematodes, insects, mites, slugs, and snails. Now, these will affect different parts of your plant. And as you would see in the diagram, in the drawing there, it basically outlines some of the areas in which your plant could be affected. So it could be affected from the roots. We speak of nematodes, we speak of borers, we speak of weevils. It could affect your stems. We speak of borers, lepidopteras, like larvae of moths. It could affect your leaves, fruits, and of course, these are the live organisms. We also have things like phytoplasmas and viruses, which are not listed on this slide. However, the insects and mites are prolific vectors of these organisms that I just mentioned, the phytoplasmas and viruses. Next slide, please. So just to give you a little visual as to what are the organisms that we spoke about just a while ago, thrips. These are very small insects. They have rasping mouthparts. And this is very important to note because the different organisms that we will touch on today, their biology, the life cycle will affect how they are managed. So thrips have rasping mouthparts, aphids have piercing mouthparts, mites also have piercing mouthparts, nematodes, they have piercing and rasping mouthparts dependent on the species that we're speaking about. Caterpillars, which are the larval form of moths, they have chewing mouthparts. And then we have fungi and bacteria. Fungi may affect the surface of the leaf, which affects the cuticle, or they may invade the plant via the stomata and cause damage. Also, they may invade the roots of the plants or the stems. Bacteria likewise. Slugs and snails, mollusks, general word for them, they have chewing mouthparts. And the management are always, their correct management are always linked to their most vulnerable state.
Sorry to interrupt you again, I'm Nelson.
Yes.
For persons who are in the English channel, please make sure you do not have the original audio muted. If you have it muted, you will not hear anything because no translation is happening as he is speaking his English and he is in the general room. Or possibly, Nelson, if you could go into interpretation and go to the English channel.
Okay, let me switch to interpretation.
Yeah, and go to the English channel. Thank you.
All right, so I have switched to the English channel.
Everyone should hear you now. Yes.
Okay, great. So yes, just speaking of the fungi and bacteria, they could affect the plant at different stages and at different parts of the plant. Okay, so moving to the next slide. Factors that influence our plant health. Previous slide, please. Sorry. Yes, so we speak of nutrition, soil pH, temperature, humidity, water, water uptake, or the presence of water on the leaves or in the soil. The genetics, which speaks of its level of tolerance, resistance to an invasion of an organism, its habitat, how diverse its habitat is. Are there natural enemies present? Are there beneficial fungi and bacteria in the area? Can those that enhance root growth, those that would cause the death of injurious organisms, and the presence of the wide range of organisms. They could be plants, they could be being that they're in shade or they are in open field, etc. Or they could be also in a greenhouse setting. So next slide, please. Thank you. So integrated crop management, as the name suggests, it's an integrated approach to managing the health and productivity of a plant. And there are 5 main pillars to that concept, which is crop diversity, soil management, monitoring and surveillance, cultivar choice, and targeted control. Targeted control is what we will, and monitoring is what we will deal with today. Generally, what happens in a conventional production system, we purchase a particular agrochemical and we go in and we blast everything without consideration of other organisms that may exist there that may be affected, such as bees or even beneficial ladybird beetles, for example, that would feed on the pest, and other organisms in the environment. So integrated crop management actually is a form of sustainable production, sustainable crop production. And we have another speaker who will speak on soil management today. And of course, crop diversity, as I mentioned in the previous slide, if you have an increased crop diversity, what you're doing is you are engaging what is called the allelopathic potential of the plants in the environment. And this is just a strange word to say that plants interact with plants and they have beneficial impacts on each other. Next slide, please. All right, so integrated crop management. It is a whole farm approach, and it speaks to a specific site. It includes crop rotation, appropriate cultivation techniques, a careful choice of the appropriate crop variety, and the minimum use of inputs or the reliance on artificial inputs, the reduce or the minimum reliance on artificial inputs. Let me go back to point 3, the appropriate cultivation techniques. And that includes time of cultivation as well, right? If you would be observing your farm, you would realize that sometimes within the dry season or dry spell, you have the increased presence of aphids and of mites. And you may wonder why this is there. And then some of us who are inclined to use the almanac, you would see appropriate time for planting. And you would wonder, what is the significance of this? It is significant because of a number of things. The time of planting would basically indicate whether or not a pest of concern can proliferate during that time. Also, the variation of crops that you will have in your field. For example, if you were to plant sweet potatoes and corn together, there is some possible impacts there on reduction of a pest presence. Okay, we've spoken, point 4, we've spoken about resistant plants, and there are a number of varieties. Even currently, that let's look at a disease which is called citrus tristeza, which I'm certain that most of the Caribbean countries have. Just by varying the genetic composition of the plant or the combination of them, we are able to generate some level of resistance, right? We look at tomatoes, for example. This is a crop that is plagued by many viruses, and just by using resistant varieties, we are able to reduce the impact of those pests on the crop. This slide speaks to crop diversity, and I want to bring your attention to the first photo on your left-hand side. And you would realize that you have lettuce, which is colored, and you have pak choy, which is green, then you have onions, or I think it's chive. And in some cases, it is an economic decision to plant multiple crops on a small acreage or a small area. However, there is crop protection or plant health benefits to doing that. It means that, therefore, that you are reducing the surface area, you are reducing the potential for pests to proliferate in any one crop. As I mentioned earlier on, the diversity of the farm could be a salvation for your crops. Because, for example, let's take, for example, a pest issue which is common on lettuce. Aphids. Aphids are common on lettuce, right? And they also affect pasture. However, thyme and chive serve as repellents for aphids. So in this setting, on this photo, what you are doing is you are creating sort of a barrier between your lettuce from an infestation. And if you look a little ahead, you would see a barrier of trees. So crop diversity is another way of improving your crop protection practices on your farm. Now, we speak of crop protection and we speak of plant health. And many people ask, but how do we start? How do we know whether the plant is healthy or whether the plant is sick or if there's a pest? Because from a distance, I see everything green. And there's a situation where persons would go to their farm and see the place is green today, and they return 2 or 3 days later, and the entire place is brown. And this is what we wish to promote. Pay attention to your crops. Pay attention to every species of plant on your farm. And how do you do that? You get into the farm and you start looking. So you get in close. Don't stay from a distance and say it's looking nice and green. The disease, the insect, the slug or snail may just be there and not yet have done its damage. Look at the entire plant. Don't look at the flowers or just one leaf. Look at the entire plant. Understand what is going on with your plant. It could be just a blemish that may show up today, and 3 or 4 days later, in the case of white potatoes, that's the end of your production. So pay attention. Examine groups of plants. If we go to the previous slide, if we remember the previous slide, we'd see of a farm, a diverse farm. And examining groups of plants will, of course, tell you what is going on. It will help you assess the potential of spread of a pest or disease in your farm. And also it may tell you whether or not you have natural enemies present. It may tell you a number of things, whether your plants are flowering, like those who may use things like marigold in your farm, which has repellent properties. You may see that your marigold is flowering, and it may be a good indication that there's something happening there. You will also want to look at your entire farm or the groups of plants to see whether or not you have beneficials or just organisms that speak to the health of your ecosystems, like butterflies. And very important, very, very important, is consult your records. Many times farmers, backyard owners do not keep records. They plant and they harvest, not paying attention to what would have happened along the way. When did I add some nutrition? Did I do any crop protection practices? When did I weed? These are the things, please, you need to record those things because they give you some history of your farm, especially when we're speaking of crop rotation. Planting the same, planting the same type of crop in the same on the same lot of land is not advisable. I mean, sequentially. So you need to break the cycle, and that way your pest life cycle will be disrupted, and hence a reduction in pest population, pest impact on your farm. Next slide, please. Okay, so here are some quick tips for natural approaches that we could use. Nutrition. Ensure that your soil is properly has the adequate nutrition for the crops that you're planting. And that is use of organic matter, use of lime, ensure that your pH is correct. Ensure that your water retention capacity of the soil is adequate. The planting time, we touched on that a little earlier on, whether you plant during the rainy season, whether you plant during the dry season, are you going to plant in the evening time when the sun is going down, or are you going to plant in the early morning when the sun is going up? These are, you need to pay attention to that as well. Early harvest. Some pests will affect your crop just when you're about to harvest, when the crop is ripening. And in case of fruits, for example, fruit flies, their time of maturity of the fruits that the fruit flies will not attack the fruits. And so timing is of the essence. Harvest your fruits just about maturity, especially the fruits that can be ripened out of the tree being harvested. Yes, use resistant varieties. Ensure you have some good genetic material on your farm, and that is informed by the records you've kept. So if you've kept records and you know that you're planting peppers and there's a particular pest or disease that affects your peppers, and this is your history, you have that in your record, then while researching to find the appropriate planting material, you can make reference to your notes and say, I want a variety of peppers that is resistant to X, Y, Z. Removal of infested plants. That is very important because having an infested plant in your field, especially when it relates to a fungus or it relates to bacteria, removal of the infested plants is important. Habitat and crop diversity, we touched on that. Oil preparations, very simple way of preparing crop protection products, and we will touch on that in the next slide shortly. Sticky traps, and I want to just highlight grease barriers or trail interrupters. In the case of aphids, mealybugs, scales, they are usually attended by ants. And ants do spread these insects. And one way we could prevent that from happening is by putting a greasy barrier on the stems of the plants, especially things like your mangoes, your guavas, your citrus plants. And just that grease barrier, basically the Vaseline or some oil or some motor grease, vehicle grease, could prevent the ants from going up the plant and interacting with the pest and subsequently spreading them. Next slide, please. So oil recipes: 1 cup of vegetable oil, a tablespoon of mild liquid soap, and 2 to 8 tablespoons. You mix that in a quart of water and you could spray your plants. These are for the control of aphids, thrips, mites, and scales. This solution has a number of ways in which it affects these organisms. Number one, it creates a film over these organisms and prevent them from breathing, in the case of thrips and aphids and mites. And in scales, you would notice that they have this, sometimes this white, fluffy, waxy layer. This preparation, what it does, it breaks down this waxy layer and exposes them to the sun, to which they are susceptible. Yes. The next one is a very interesting one. It is just a slight change of the previous one, which is the addition of baking soda. And with the addition of baking soda, what happens? It helps control some pathogens such as fungus. So we have powdery mildew and sooty mold, which is caused by the high infestation of scales and aphids. And so these are just little things that you can find around your home that could basically transform your crop protection practices on your backyard farm, your flower gardens, or even on your farms. So we're going to touch on botanicals and soursop. This is the first one there, and I'm just going to go through them to speak of their effective range. They are contact, they are insecticidal, they cause stomach poisoning, they are larvicides, they are repellents, and one of the interesting things is they are antifeedants. Antifeedants mean it prevents the organism from feeding. Just by being in contact with the organisms, the pest that is, it prevents them from feeding. So they don't feel hungry and they don't feel the need to consume. Okay. Just one note. In this case, this product will take about 2 or 3 days to be effective on your application. Next slide. Chili peppers. Again, another stomach poison to the insect. It's a repellent, antifeedant, and also a fumigant. That is, the fumigant there is used in the context of storage, for storage pests. So if you have harvested your sweet potatoes and you have it in storage, this is a good product that you could apply and prevent post-harvest damage. The preparation of this is to dry the peppers and macerate it in water, and this is a very easy process. Next slide. Garlic has benefits for humans, and also it has benefits in the field as well, on the farm. It is an insecticide, it's a repellent, it's also an antifeedant, it's a bactericide, a fungicide, and also it causes nemostatic effect on nematodes. Means that it may not kill the nematode, but it will reduce effect of the nematodes. Right? And this is just a few notes there of the pest that it affects. 100 grams of garlic clove in 0.5 liters of water. You need to add some soap. The reason for the soap, it functions as a sticker, and it also helps emulsify the oil so it could have its full effect on the pest that is being applied for. This has to be allowed to rest for about 24 hours, and then you could apply the infusion to your crops. Neem. Neem is excellent, an excellent botanical, and I would advise any farmer to have at least one plant of neem on his farm. Not only does it serve as an allelopathic plant on the farm, which means it repels, but every part of the neem plant can be formulated into a botanical pesticide. As a matter of fact, I love this plant very much because it was part of my research thesis as when I did my bachelor's degree. So the seeds can be used, the fruits can be used, the leaves can be used as being dried and ground down to a powder, and it could be used as that. It can also be mixed with oils and be used as a sticky layer on stems of plants as protectant. It can be sprayed on the plant as a solution. Controls armyworms, controls diamondback moth, controls cutworms. Cutworms can be very destructive, especially in vegetable crops. You may plant a quarter acre of cabbage and the soil is infested with cutworms. The next morning you're up and half of that is gone. That can be a heartbreaker. Leaf miners, it also controls. However, the active ingredient, which is Azadirect, in the neem, they are very sensitive to the radiation of the sun. Therefore, it is best to apply in the evening time, which allows the effect of that product to take root during the night times. It has a few hours to go there. Also have been proven to be effective against Fusarium octosporum, Rhizoctonia solani, which affects the roots, and also Sclerotium. So it is a fungicide. Next slide. All right, so this beautiful flower there, the chrysanthemums, they do have pesticide properties. As a matter of fact, some of the commercially available pesticides have the active ingredient found in this plant as its active ingredient. Yes, it has been synthesized in a lab, but this nonetheless is the active ingredients. Very effective against caterpillars, beetles, aphids, mites, locusts. My Trinidadian friends who are connected, you would have some incidents of locusts sometimes in the year. This can be a good option on a small scale. Next slide. All right, the famous tobacco is not only used in cigarettes and smoking, but it also has its benefits. I think that maybe tobacco cultivation should be for pest management other than recreational. So yes, it is insecticidal, repellent, fungicidal, and acaricidal. Acaricidal is to control mites. Yes. However, there's one thing that we should pay attention to, and this is highlighted below in red. Any preparation that is done from tobacco, where we are extracting the nicotinoids and from the plant, they are more effective when they're used at temperatures above 30 degrees. So for example, those who are producing under greenhouse conditions within the Caribbean context, if you have this list of pests which are listed there in your greenhouse, maybe one of the options could be using a tobacco preparation. Next slide. And turmeric. Turmeric, very powerful crop, very powerful plant, and also has insecticidal and repellent properties. Next slide. All right, so just to wrap up everything that I've mentioned today, a careful observation of your farm, your field, and your plants, taking quick actions are crucial to ensuring plant health and safeguarding your biological resources. When I speak of biological resources, I speak of all your plants and all the beneficials that are associated with them, be there fungus, bacteria, insects, or our very special bees, precious bees, which does the pollination, produces honey, and shows the health of our ecosystem. Just before I end, all of the plants that I mentioned, one of the very important thing is they are very easy to prepare by drying or in its raw form, grinding and allowing them to steep for about 24 hours to ensure that these active ingredients are released and you can apply them to your farm. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for being here. And this was Nelson Laville presenting on behalf of Fighters Plus. Thank you.
Many thanks for this, Nelson. And I am sure a lot of persons are interested in those recipes. I myself will be utilizing some of them. And so the PowerPoint will be made available to you, and so you will have access to that information. So what we will do now, we will take about 10 to 15 minutes for some questions. And so if persons have any questions, if you want to share it in the chat, or you could raise your hand and speak, as we would have so many persons across the region. It would be nice to hear your lovely voice and your lovely accents. And I see Brenda has her hand up. Go ahead, Brenda.
Hi, good morning. And I am really, really happy to be here this morning to get this type of information, because I am someone who is of interest in terms of using natural resources to, you know, bring that kind of information to the farmers, because a lot of the farmers are kind of changing and kind of looking towards solutions that are more natural. I have one question in terms of I think he had mentioned the removal of infected plants. Now, a lot of farmers seem to believe that the easiest way to get rid of weeds or infected plants on your farm is to burn. What would you recommend that they do when they remove these plants to kind of get rid of it or get rid of the disease from the farm?
All right, thank you for that question. I thought that question would have come. The most sustainable practice in this case would be composting. However, depending on the organism that you're dealing with, the temperatures within a compost heap will not destroy. It will obviously, it will make that it will basically preserve the organism. So if you're dealing with a bacterial problem, bacterial disease, let's say you have bacterial wilt in your tomatoes, I would not advise that you prepare a compost with that product, with this diseased plant to apply in your field. Yes. Burning, I don't always advocate for burning, but in the context of a bacteria, I would prefer to suggest burning of those. If you are dealing with an insect, for example, let's say a mite-infested tomato or pepper plant, the temperatures within a compost heap, which could vary anywhere between 45 and 60 degrees will kill these mites. So I would suggest that you can compost those and reintroduce that compost in the soil to promote the health of your soils. So it depends on what you are infested, what your infestation is, and the possibility of destroying that organism through the process of composting.
Okay, lovely. We have some questions in the chat. Can these solutions be applied successfully on a commercial scale?
I think so. I really think that it is possible. Especially if we look at the chrysanthemums. I mentioned that there are actually agrochemical companies who have produced a synthetic product with the active ingredient. Now, on a commercial scale, it would require you to do a lot of planning. If you want to use the botanicals in their raw form, it would require you to do a lot of planning. And so I'm not saying to go destroy an entire field of soursops or get number of soursop leaves or seeds, etc. for the preparation. But if you systematically do that approach, then it could work. And what is also interesting is as you continue to transform your farm, not only looking at the botanicals, but looking at it from an integrated crop management approach with the diversity, the rotation, etc., then what you realize is that the pest incidence in your farm will reduce. You are enhancing the soil, your plants, the soil is a lot healthier, the plants can absorb the nutrients that they need. Pests seldom attack fully healthy and properly fed plants. So as you engage the full principles of integrated crop management, you are then generating a more healthy ecosystem and discouraging the presence of injurious organisms.
While you're on that healthy plant, I know just a question and something from me there, Nelson. I know some persons tend to like to, add nitrogen and make the plant look green and juicy. What are some of the impacts there as it relates to, attracting more pests?
Anytime a plant is overly fed with nitrogen, what you have happening is the influx of organisms that love succulent-looking plants, like aphids. And aphids affect the plant in a number of ways. One, it is a vector for a lot of diseases, viruses, and it also, its high population generates a lot of sooty mold on the plant. So I would caution the use of high nitrogen as a precaution for your plant health, and also in terms of what effects it has on your soils, right? I will not delve into the soils part. There's a soils person that will speak, but yes, be cautious and not to overly feed your plants with nitrogen.
Thanks, Nelson. And I see Empress has her hands up. Go ahead, Empress.
Yes, good morning again. This presentation by Mr. Nelson, I must commend him for it, and all those, who in collaboration with, because I keep saying to many farmers that there's a need for us to use natural products to deal with pests, because in the long run, when pesticides that are very toxic are used, yes, they might get a yield from a commercial perspective, but then when we look now, we see a high increase of different type of cancers. So we also have to look at, yes, we want to get things from a commercial perspective, but look at food safety and security at the same time. That's just my input.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that input, Empress. I will take a question from the chat about the tobacco solution. Is it toxic to, for example, lettuce plants if the residue remains on the lettuce leaves?
Okay, so with tobacco, with the tobacco preparation, it is recommended that you should not be consumed, unless you have at least 6 days have elapsed since your application. Like the neem extract, the tobacco is sensitive to UV lights from the sun, and it will eventually disintegrate. But it is a lot more resilient than that of the neem extract. So for consumption, you should allow at least 6 days to elapse before you consume. And with all the botanicals, there is the possibility of burning the plants. That is why the advice is after you've done your preparation, do a test. So use one plant, test it on a leaf, observe its reaction, and if it needs diluting, then you go ahead and do the diluting. Yes, but yes, they can burn, but we need to be cautious.
Nigeria, those from Suriname, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Renier.
Well, and I saw you give some advices how to prepare the oils and so on. But then, if I will plant on my acreage, the soursop trees, the neem trees, the chrysanthemum, the tobaccos, what will be the effect of that in relation to the oils and so that I will make?
Let me see if I get your question correctly. You're asking whether on your farm, if you have these plants planted, whether they could have some beneficial effects on the farm, or are you asking whether you should still use the oils?
No, that is true. That is true. The first one is true. How high will be that effect in relation to the preparations?
I really do not know how to answer that question though. What I could say to this is having these plants on your farm is already a benefit to the diversity of your farm. Just those plants, because naturally occurring, they have those effects on pests, right? Having them on your farm means that you also have the availability on your farm. But I would not say take a tobacco extract and to use on a tobacco plant. I would advise to use a neem extract on a tobacco plant. I'm not sure if I captured your question in my responses.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we have about 3 questions left from the chat. How is the soursop used to make insecticide?
Okay, so the soursop, the leaves can be used, it can be dried and ground to do a preparation, and the seeds are also used. The most potent part of the soursop in terms of pesticide preparation are the extracts from the seeds. So the seeds can be ground in a machine, in a grinder, like you are doing coffee or cocoa, and then that is allowed to steep for about 24 hours. You can do a water extraction, and you could also do an oil extraction or water extraction, and you use the oil as a sticker for the pesticide when it's applied.
Okay, lovely. And then next question is the use of biological stimulants recommended, or are these basically the same as using traditional fertilizers? I'm not sure if this question is clear.
There are benefits to using biostimulants. Those that I'm familiar with are plant extracts. And basically what they do is for example, those that are used for root generation. Basically what it's doing is having things like plants that would have high levels of cytokinin, for example, because it's a plant hormone that can be used. I would not advise the using of synthetically produced stimulants, but there are organisms, for example, if we speak of the soil, we speak of fungus or bacteria that would promote root growth, stimulate root growth, and these can be looked as biostimulants. So it depends on how you are classifying it and its origins, but there are some benefits to using them. With caution, of course.
Of course. Next, what is the best IPM strategy for dealing with diamondback moth as they are becoming resistant to certain chemicals?
The IPM strategy for diamondback moth and the resistance to synthetic chemicals. I think the strategy is a comprehensive one, and if we go back to the ICM chat that I shared, the slide, it starts with the planting material. Are they resistant? It also goes to your diversity. Do you have plants in your farm that actually attract the biological control for them? Yes. There are organisms, fungus that can control them, bacteria that can control them. There are predators that can feed on them, feed on the parasitoids that feeds on the eggs. So the IPM strategy I would suggest is use your natural management, use your resistant planting material, enhance the diversity of your farm, which will promote the presence of biological control agents. The more we embrace what is available to us in terms of our biological resources, the less we have dependency on these synthetic chemicals. And in the years that I've been working in plant health and all the research and articles that I've reviewed, I've never seen any organism build resistance against a beneficial organism. The laws of the jungle remains. You're a pest, I am a predator, I'll feed on you. Yes.
Okay. With the interest of time, we have 3 questions. If we could just briefly go through them and then have Mr. Damian come on to present. So the first one is, some insects and soil life can also be helpful for crops and plants. What is the effect of these natural insecticidals on them? Will they kill them too?
Say that again, please.
So you have other beneficial insects.
Yes.
Would the natural insecticides also kill those beneficial ones?
Yes, there's also always collateral damage. However, because of the short lifespan of the active ingredients found in botanicals, you have less persistent in the field, which means that your natural beneficial fauna can bounce back a lot quicker. So they are insects as well, they are organisms, and so these botanicals may have effects on them, but they will bounce back quickly.
Okay, so for the interest of time, if we have any more time at the end, we will answer the final 2. With that, Mr. Damian, you could go ahead and present.
Okay, greetings. Can you hear me?
Yes, I could hear you. Nelson, what I will do, I will send you the questions and you could probably respond to it in the chat. I could hear you clearly, Damian.
Okay, and are you seeing my first slide?
No, not seeing any sharing from you yet.
Okay, let me share. Okay. Are you seeing the slide now?
Yes, you could just go in full screen.
Okay. All right, how are we doing?
Good to go.
Okay, so greetings, collective. I'm honored to be here. I'm not seeing myself, or am I being seen?
Yes, you could be seen.
Yes. Okay. All right, great. All right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm here to talk about regenerative agroecological soil conservation. And it is a real privilege for me to share the years of research that I've been struggling with. For all of us that are natural farmers or gardeners, we know that this is a long journey. So I'm hoping that the journey that I've been on is of some benefit to at least some of us starting out, and those of us that are well along in the journey. I'm coming from St. Lucia, and my family and I are currently building a model farm, which we hope to invite all of you to in the near future. It's called New Flower Regenerative Garden. And here we hope to demonstrate some of the techniques that we're going to begin to share today. Just as a quick overview, we are going to take a few minutes to go into the forest, because I believe that any study of agroecology and natural farming should begin with a close examination of our most productive natural systems. And when I mean production, I'm talking about carbon, and I'm talking about carbon as currency. So I'd like all of us to switch our minds and not think about the products of farming per se as yet, but think about the interception of sunlight and the conservation of water as our primary focus, and this being how we produce profit. A forest, of course, produces carbon by intercepting massive amounts of light, almost all the light, and this is what we will focus on at the beginning. Moving from this, we will talk about agroecology and soil conservation. Of course, this is the natural next topic to focus on as we move from the forest. We will then talk about ecosystem service providers. So these are the things that we can orchestrate with on our farms, in our gardens, to provide services to our focus crops. We will then delve into regenerative soil management, which is a complicated term, but really it's very simple. It's about getting carbon and organic matter into our soil so that the magic of the organisms that live there can do their work. And we will end off with some of the methods that I've been testing. And again, we'll talk about next steps and the way forward. So into the forest. So I'm hoping that you can read the slides. I will not be reading from the slides too much, but I have this slide here to show you that even in forests, there are breaks or areas where the canopy allows for undergrowth. And I want us to think about this undergrowth as our young crops and how we can manipulate the canopy in our planting environments to simulate some of the protection and the timing that forests have. We in the Caribbean have a wet, dry season, and during that season, the leaves fall, exposing the forest floor to the sunlight, and this is when these under canopy crops can thrive. Again, leaves that are intercepting our sunlight eventually make their way to the forest floor, creating mulch. So in a forest system, the soil is never exposed. And if it is exposed, that's because of a landslide or a fire. And that's a mechanism that we're not going to touch on here, but we are going to try and think about mimicking the concept of never exposing our soil. This goes against what a lot of us have been doing, and myself included as an organic farmer, continually playing with different techniques of soil plowing, and addition of organic matter, but never really covering the soil completely. So this is going to be what we're going to be experimenting and talking about, how we can actually achieve continuous soil coverage. Just moving into agroecology and taking from what we just talked about with the canopy. In this slide here, we can see that this is a plant that we're going to be talking a lot more about. I believe it's a French word, vetiver. And it is something that I've been experimenting with on my farm for a very long time now, using it in different ways. And we're going to talk about the way I'm using it because it's a little different than how most projects have gone about promoting it. But in this slide, it is planted or intercropped with pineapple. Pineapples are endemic to our region and are also understory or epiphytes that grow in forests. And they flower and produce in the dry season when the canopy has fallen and they can get full light. So I am using vetiver here to give it a little bit of shading. And then when it is ready to flower, we cut it back. So this slide, as you can see here, I'll try and zoom in a little bit. We can see here that the vetiver has disappeared. You would never even know it was there, but it is now on the floor of beneath the plants. So this is an example of an agroecological adaptation of the growing system where we are using an ecosystem service provider to mimic a natural function that these plants are naturally adapted to. So we as agroecologists are really systems orchestrators, and we have to be super sensitive and in tuned to the natural niches of our plants. That is actually how they function within their natural environment, how they evolved in relationship to the plants around them, to the soil type, to the weather conditions. And so this is a form of thinking that is required, and it is a deep and important process that we all embark on if we are to seriously address the realities of a changing climate. So just for a little background, where I'm growing is not considered an agricultural zone. I'm coastal, I'm within 300 meters of the sea. I'm not at very high elevation, so I am hotter and drier than most of our farming regions on the island. But this is okay because the techniques that we're testing here anticipate perhaps where the environment will be changing. Okay, before we leave ecosystem service providers, I just want to broaden the concept a little bit to make us understand that everything can provide services to our systems. So this is an example of stone terracing. This is dry fit stone walling that I'm very proud to be a student of and have been doing it for a while and finally getting walls that don't collapse ever. They did at first. So this is something I would love to share in the future with you. The techniques, I believe that just changing the slope from this to this is an amazing soil conservation practice. Stones themselves can also be used to mimic what our ravines. So all of us know that in a ravine, you don't see soil. In ravines, you see stones. That is all that is left because everything else has been eroded away from these zones. But it teaches us a lesson that if we armor our drains and pathways and major water courses in and around our farm with stones, that there will be no more erosion. And it will also reduce the power of the water. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave stones for now because I want to get into regenerative techniques. So cover crops and green manures are really the backbone of the system that I'm proposing to you today. And the reason for this, just a little background, is I've made so many thousands of pounds of compost, and I'm still a proud compost maker, and I use compost on my farm continually. But I now use compost to amend the immediate root zone of my transplants and seeds. And that's it. I cannot use compost efficiently and fertilize my crops for their entirety. And if we are to think about scaling our operations, we have to make compost for sure, because this is how we inoculate our soil and root zones of our plants with beneficial microorganisms. I'm going to mention microorganisms a little bit more, but once we dive into that world, that's an hour just starting to talk about it. So if there are some questions, I will definitely love to answer what I can at the end. But for now, I want us to focus on another method of adding organic matter, and that is cover crops. So I'm again going to zoom in here. This is mucuna, which grows excellent on my farm. I don't have to plant it. I just leave one to go in the bush, and I go once a year and harvest the seeds. I have a packet of mucuna seeds, and when my crop is ending, I allow the weeds to take over, and I stick some mucuna bean seeds in the ground as the last of my crop is being harvested. This is also catching the nutrients from the previous crop, so we call this catch cropping. And when we mow this down, it becomes green manure. So there'll be I'll talk a little bit more about this in a slide to follow. So regenerative soil management is preserving an organic and adding organic matter into the soil. Now, a point that wasn't obvious to me when I began this journey is I was always focused on what's above the ground, how much biomass I can create, and how much I can get into the soil. I was even digging trenches and burying green material and sticks and doing a massive amount of work to get organic matter into the soil profile. But if roots do that for us. So if we, first of all, leave our crop roots in the soil, and I'm hearing Nelson's voice saying that not if they have nematodes. So we have to be aware that if we have disease crops, different rules apply. But if we leave the roots of our crops and we leave the roots of our cover crops, which by the way have to have deep roots, shallow roots, diverse roots, so that they penetrate all of the soil profile, then these roots are actually not only adding organic matter as they break down, but they're also in a way plowing our soil for us, because these roots kind of make capillaries and pathways for other roots to follow. So this is how we begin to talk about no-till or minimal tillage. Now, for those of us that don't know, no-till farming systems are widely used in the temperate regions across the world, especially in America. I've seen data that up to 40% of soybean, corn, and grain crops are grown currently without heavily cultivating the soil. So just the base concept that we need to plow and aerate our soil is definitely been called into question, and is producing comparable yields and producing far less greenhouse gases. There's difficulties with the amount of chemicals that are still being used, but they're going to work that out, hopefully. But we are going to focus on the tropical regions, because we have a different set of challenges here in the tropics where our weather makes it very difficult to do that type of cultivation. So I'm going to skip through. This slide, I want to take a minute to really focus on its importance. Although it's not the prettiest slide I'm showing you, it's arguably the most important for farmers, because we as farmers need to understand that we cannot do anything unless it makes financial sense. And the margins within agriculture production everywhere don't allow us to do things just out of goodwill and for the benefit of the environment for long. We could try them, but unless we get systems that are actually efficient economically, it remains at a backyard scale for most of us. So the struggle now is to prove that these 6 points are true. And I believe that if they are true, even 2 or 3 of them, that we can save money by practicing regenerative agriculture. So we know that this provides, that organic matter provides accessible nutrients to plants. And the key word is accessible. So a lot of our fertilizers are in forms that are not easily accessible. They're not natural. So providing nutrients in forms that plants are accustomed to getting them is always the most efficient way to provide nutrients. Just by having more organic matter and the biology associated with that organic matter automatically will reduce the fertilizer load required. Fungus and bacteria. When you have populations of diverse fungus and bacteria, you have populations that can control the outbreak of pathogens, because everything in nature has its natural enemy, including fungus and bacteria. So the theory, which is pretty much given as doctrine now, is by increasing diversity, we decrease outbreaks. And the same holds true for pest and disease as well. So decreasing or increasing diversity will also if we increase diversity in our planting systems, we also decrease noxious and persistent weeds. I don't know for all of you out there, but nutgrass is a nemesis of mine. But I've found that if I keep the soil covered long enough and my canopy of my beds closed quick enough, it's easily removed and their populations become much less resilient and decrease over time. So if we are selecting for fast growing, or we're able to produce conditions where canopies close fast and we're keeping the soil covered, a lot of our noxious weeds will be removed from the system, even if it's gradually, therefore less herbicides. Just quickly, water holding capacity is undoubtedly increased with organic matter because of aggregation, and also protection at the surface, which decreases the speed at which it has to infiltrate and then allows for better saturation. And if we can aerate our soil using decomposing plant roots and superior aggregation, then we don't have to cultivate, which is the main reason why we plow our soils. Okay, moving. So we talked about cover crops a little bit, so I will go past this slide, but just so you understand, this was on my farm about a week ago when I started preparing for this presentation, and this was the cover crop I had in place. I'll give you a little zoom in. So it's diverse. There's Mucuna bean, there's grasses. You can't see them too well, but these are callaloo or amaranth that a lot of them fell over, but they became a trellis for the plants. Okay, I'm zooming out. I'm going to move. So after I went through with the weed eater, I was able to cut everything. Mucuna bean doesn't tangle up in weed eaters, as does other vines, so it's a nice one. I scraped together the soil in the paths, and then I picked it up and put it down the center of the bed. So I am going to be planting on the edges of this bed. I have a drip line either side, but in the center of the bed, the middle 2 to 3 feet are a composting or in-row, in-situ composting zone. This is controversial for many reasons, but I've managed to get away with it, and I'm going to keep doing it until I see a problem. But I'll show you how I've mitigated some of this risk. So after I've collected the compost, I physically go with my hands and push it together so it forms a tight row down the middle of the bed. And this is me spreading chicken manure on down the middle of the bed as well. I've found I don't need to have spread as much chicken manure as I did here because I cut the grass and put it on the bed at the same time, meaning it was still green, full of water and nitrogen, and would likely, with just a little bit more added water, begin to start heating up and breaking down the next day. But I've added chicken manure because if you're using drier material, you need to increase your nitrogen to carbon ratio to allow for proper breakdown of dry materials. So this is what I do. I also always use wood ash in combination with chicken manure. This creates a very complete fertilizer from my experience. I'm lucky enough to get it from 2 restaurants that use grills, so I go and collect their wood ash. I also do burning on my farm and I collect. I also have a coal pit on my farm, which I use to supplement this with biochar or coal pit grindings, which also is very beneficial for the soil, but again, beyond the scope of our conversation today. So just moving through, after I've after I've added these amendments, I'm now mulching with the vetiver. And in light of the time, I'm just going to go through and pray that this video plays. This is something that's important for me to share today because I believe it is a critical component in the use of vetiver. I'm trying to get it to play. If it doesn't play, I'll quickly describe what it's about. Okay, so I'm going to leave that for now, but basically this is me cutting the vetiver. You can see in my hand here with a bread knife. So I picked this up for $2 or $3 at any store. I have about 10 or 20 of them in my arsenal. And I can, is everyone seeing this slide?
Yes, I could see. Maybe you could try coming out of full screen play and then going back in the full screen, Damien.
Okay, let me try that. Once I'm nervous, my technical abilities on these things goes down dramatically. So in the interest of me not embarrassing myself, I'm just going to talk you through this a little bit longer. So basically, the gist of this is this knife cuts this stuff really, really good. and you cut it as low to the ground as possible. So that is my secret tip for managing vetiver. Is in other instances, it's been used as an erosion control barrier and left a foot or 2 tall in order to create that barrier. But I don't use it like that on my farm. I cut vetiver down to the ground like how our ancestors used to cut it when they were building roofs for their houses in the region. And it regrows excellent when you do it this way. I also space out about 1 meter to 1.5 meters between clumps. I do have snakes and poisonous snakes on my farm and in the region. So I have to be careful not to create permanent hedges where they could nest. And I also cut every other vetiver so that I have gaps in between my wall. And additionally, if we want to have vetiver as an erosion control, you could do staggered planting where you would offset to cover the spaces in between. But let me just move to, I guess it is playing. All right, this is me cutting it with the knife. You can see how easily it slides through. It takes a little strength. I've done this a few times. It's a little bit of a workout, but I can cut a clump in a minute to a minute and 20 seconds. So that, and I plant the vetiver very close to where I'm planting. So just lower down in the image, that is the area where the farming that I've shown you is taking place. On this day, I cut 8 clumps to do the amount of mulching that I need to do here. And I believe that each clump, when fully grown, covers about 2 meters of bed space and the pathway. So we can calculate how much vetiver you would need in an area by using the calculation that it'll cover in this manner approximately 2 meters. Let me just zoom in here. And if you notice, I'm giving it a braided or crisscross fashion. So this helps it stay in place. And remembering that I am planting, along the edges here. And the material that we piled up is underneath the vetiver there. Okay. Finally, another innovation that I'm going to zoom in and just give you a look at. For those of you that have never used crop protection meshes within the context of climate change, I really believe this is a critical technology. It does so much for your young plants. It's unbelievable. And it's mimicking the canopy in a forest. So it is diffusing the light and giving you that beautiful whitish, greenish light that exists under canopy, which is ideal for young plants that are in their vegetative stage. So it broadens their leaf index or leaf surface area, and it protects them from the impacts of direct sunlight and direct rain. So this allows me to transplant in heavy rains and to seed in rainy conditions. If I want extra protection, I put 2 if I know that heavy rains are coming. So this is another topic that I'd like to present on another time. So I've been using this with marked yield increases for several years now. So I would advise that people look into this. They're supported by metal row covers that can be easily ordered online, and this material can be shipped. I'm hoping that agencies will start bringing it in bulk for farmers to address the impacts of climate change and as a major climate smart agricultural tool. But in terms of soil conservation, it is serving here to further protect the soil from the impacts of both, like I said, rain and sun, and create a little bit more humidity for the breakdown of that material. So we're going to leave this material there for 2 weeks to kind of let the heat spike up and come down a little bit and settle down, and it will reduce in size. And then I would go in and kind of scrunch it up to a little more towards the middle of the bed, shift the vetiver around in order for me to transplant underneath the netting. And also note that I've turned on my sprinkler here to further saturate that zone so we get the correct moisture requirements for the material to break down as fast as possible. Okay, so just in conclusion, some key points to remember is that soil conservation, in my humble opinion, begins with organic matter into the soils, because this is how nature conserves its soils. There's no soil erosion in the forest because these forest soils are bound together by roots and protected at the surface by decomposing organic matter. Soil organic matter builds aggregates in the soil, and humic acids are the product of decomposing organic matter that are excreted by the bacteria and fungal networks. And these acids bind together soil and create soil aggregates that are stable. And so when they're wet, they don't just disintegrate. And this is the key to increasing the infiltration capacity of your soil, which automatically reduces any effects of degradation and erosion. Compaction, we haven't talked about compaction, but compaction is the reason that we struggle in the region and have to be perpetually plowing the soil. Now, this compaction is caused not only by us being silly and walking on our beds, but it is caused by the immense impact of the raindrops that we get in our heavy rainfall events, which is unique to the tropics. It also, what is unique is after it rains, the sun comes out and immediately bakes the soil and creates a compaction layer or a crust, which then when raindrops interact with this layer, they cannot infiltrate easily and they run off. Runoff is what accumulates and causes erosive overland flows. So compaction is the enemy, and what I'm proposing to you is that organic matter, when used wisely, is the solution. Okay, root systems add much more carbon in the soil than slashing and mulching above ground growth. This is a little bit counterintuitive, but the research is showing that this is true, and it has a lot to do with the efficiency that root material is converted into and feeds microorganisms. Diverse communities of cover crops are better than monocrops. So when we're using cover crops, we have to also incorporate our natural weeds and a diversity of plants, because we didn't touch on microbiology and the rhizosphere that much, but each plant has a set of, or a community that serves it and is served by the plant. And each plant brings this community to the table or attracts this community. So if we engineer our cover crops correctly, especially with the next crop or our target crop in mind, we can give our crops a head start by inoculating the soil with the appropriate biology. As soil gets more fertile and aggregated, invasive and problematic weeds like nutgrass and other runners become less. I'd like to also take this time to say that I used to be plagued with what we call watergrass. It's I'm not sure what it's called in different places, but it's a vining grass that is very prevalent under banana fields, and it's everybody's enemy. And I thought about it one day and said, no, it's going to be my friend. And it is now one of my most important plants for compost making because of how its water content and its nitrogen content, and also its hormonal content. So it has auxins in it that increase the rate of decomposition. So I now allow watergrass, if someone can remember the name, you'll mention it after, all over my farm, and I use it gladly as a source of nutrient and protection for the soil. And just finally, natural systems are never or rarely exposed, and nature does know best. So we need to, our ancestors knew this. And I believe if we could have a time machine and go backwards, we would see things that probably resemble what I'm doing here in some shape or fashion. And they had only the forests and the grasslands around them to learn from. They didn't have agrochemical companies and monopolies and agro businesses influencing their decision making. So within the context of the modern world, we have to ground ourselves in an ancestral reconnecting with the ecology and the environment that we're blessed to be in. And I believe if we listen closely, we'll continue to develop and grow amazing new agro ecosystems. So with that, I will close off. I apologize for taking a little bit longer than expected, but I hope that didn't inconvenience anyone too much. Thank you very much.
Okay, many thanks for this, Damian. And of course, as we could see, Damian is a farmer first. I forgot to mention it at the beginning, but comes in nicely at the end. He's not just speaking from the books, he is speaking from as a practitioner, as a farmer with the years of experience. And so thank you so much for this informative presentation. And you would have seen both presenters came from an angle of actually implementing these practices, experimenting with it, and have the experience so they know what they are talking about. And so with that, I would like to take the questions, and we already have, if you have any question, you can always raise your hand. And in the interim, while we are taking the questions, just to get an idea from you how you felt about this session, if your knowledge has improved, I will be sending a post. For persons who are co-hosts, please do not do anything as you may end up ending the poll. Thank you. And so the first question, Damian, is the material, the netting that you showed, is it similar to mosquito netting?
No. This is what they call a woven plastic netting. So maybe if you can still see can you still see my slideshow?
Yes, you're still sharing. You could go back.
All right. So let me try and zoom in here a little bit. So the holes within it are probably about a 1/4 inch. So it is far more breathable than a mosquito netting. And it is designed, I believe it's a PVC, recycled PVC that they make this from. It is actually a French company that I purchased it from a gentleman from Green Tech who operates and brings in materials from, I believe, France. And it comes in, this one came in big rolls. It can almost cover 3 of my beds. It covers 2 easily. And it came on 1,000-meter or 1,000-foot roll, and it cost me a little bit too much. So I'm hoping that that these type of products can be brought in bigger quantities. I've also used greenhouse shade netting with similar results. I wanted to experiment with the white color to see if it had any benefits in terms of heat reflection. Because the concern with this is that it is breathable so that heat can escape, and that is much of the light is reflected and not absorbed. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thanks, Damian. Our next question. So after the material breaks down, could you go right ahead and plant, or would you need to clear away anything to prepare the land for planting?
I didn't mention this, but I'm going to tell you a secret. I don't wait any time. So I prepared what I did, and I will go the next day or immediately and transplant my plants in that. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to know if the decomposing material that's adjacent to the plants are going to have any negative impact. And as yet, I've found none. But I had to say that you should leave some time, because whenever we're dealing with manures, especially, it is always best to leave as much time from the moment of application to the time of harvest. But if you're not using manures, there's generally no safety concern with regards to composting adjacent to your plants. I've also been on the lookout for slugs and snails. So I was thinking, if I put all this organic matter piled up near my plants, I'm going to be inviting in slugs and snails to come and have a feast. I can't explain to you why that hasn't happened, but it has not happened to me whatsoever. So I don't know whether they stay in the rotting material or whether I just don't have a very large problem with it. But that would be something that I would want you to consider about your timing. But but don't take it away. That, if anything, that decomposing material should just be confined, and then when you're ready to do your next crop cycle, it can be manipulated. What also happens, if I have a long-standing crop, I'll lift it up a little bit and pull out the decomposed material from beneath it and side dress my plants with it. Also, my next move on that bed would be to plant in the middle of the bed, right? By opening the compost, putting it where the crop used to be, and then going with a pointed hoe or creating a pointed furrow in the middle of the bed. And then having the decomposing material on the side of the bed. So I'm working on different strategies of how to use the system without it impacting production and without any delays in your production. I hope that helps.
Okay, thanks for that, Damien. We have from Donna, she's expressing to you excellent presentation. And have you done any financial assessment on your work?
That is actually, I'm hoping to be the center of the research that I'm hoping to begin pursuing in as soon as January this year, where I will set up field trials, side-by-side trials with different methods to compare yields and most importantly, labor inputs. Because part of what I believe will make this cost effective is the time saving on soil preparation. So if you don't have to plow with a tractor, if you don't have to do the backbreaking work or pay somebody to plow your beds, that's a huge labor cost savings. And if you have reduced irrigation needs and reduced pest and disease pressure and increased fertility, I'm hoping that all of these factors would offset any of the little bit of playing around and dancing we have to do to make the system work. So short answer is I don't know yet, but I'm hoping to know soon. But from my personal experience, I'm able to manage this farm in about an hour or two work after I come home from work and still produce crops for my family. So I believe it can work.
Okay, thanks, Damien. We have Chani hands up. Chani, you can go ahead.
No problem, and thank you for the information, Damien. One of the things I wanted to add, and I do think that we are short for time here, and Damien, you did make the point about the organic matter and the follow-up point that you made in terms of why perhaps sometimes you transplant very early to see whether there's a negative effect. I want us to also, while we hear about the organic matter, there are several other things that we have to consider, which is really, and it is not very spoken about a lot, is the quality of the organic matter and also the activation of the organic matter, simply meaning that if you have organic matter without water and without the air, you don't get that activation or the full potential realized. And so that is one of the things that when we think of, yes, organic matter is important in terms of being in the soil, but without that requisite moisture that activates it with the living organism, it does not provide that environment that is needed for the microbes or whatever the chemicals are to give you that effect that you need. And so when you think of organic matter and you think of the importance of regenerative agriculture, the nexus or the union between water or moisture, I should say, and also air and organic matter is really the silver bullet that kind of thing, and understanding how to use it is really what you will be concerned about. And like Damien said, you could see it in the forest as well. It is not just the organic matter there, but how it is interplaying with the sunlight that is coming there, the moisture that is being created there, and also the amount of air that is there. These are the combinations that give you the results that we are talking about there. The last thing, there are instances where you have organic matter and you don't have these other factors there in that kind of unison way, that you are not going to get the best out of your organic matter, even if it is there. You could have an organic matter that is very sterile and that does not support the growth of microorganisms, and so therefore it is not as useful for some of the benefits that we could get. So I just wanted to share that the audience here so that we learn and we put things together. Perhaps in a subsequent webinar, we could expand on these things. Thanks.
Great, Jenny. And just a quick point to your point. I think I briefly mentioned it, but my first experiment with getting lots of organic matter was to dig a trench and bury a bunch of organic matter and then cover it back. The next year when I went to dig it up, I saw the organic matter almost the same way I left it, because it obviously didn't get enough air and didn't get enough moisture. And so it was unactivated and didn't do anything for my system. So I was laughing at myself as you were speaking, but a very important point, and thanks for raising it.
Thanks, Chani. Thanks, Damian. And then we have our final question before we wrap up. This methodology seems very labor intensive. Do you make any profits?
Again, what I can tell you about its labor intensity is it took me about 2 hours of total time to get from that cover crop to covering it with the row covers. So when I do my calculation on 3 beds at 25 or 30 feet, those beds were, could I plow it? Well, first of all, de-plant it, because it's not just plowing. You would, if you're plowing a bed with that has overgrown like that, you would have to be removing, or traditionally we'd be flipping or removing all the organic matter first. So could I cutlass that area, or weed eat that area, rake that material away, bring it someplace else, plow it, and then cover it in 2 hours? And I'm not sure I could. I'm not sure I could do it that fast. Maybe, right? So that's why I think there's something to be said about the time efficiency if it is done well. Now, granted, I've been doing this for a while, so it might not be the first time you go out you'll be able to do it as efficiently. But I don't think it's an unreachable target to be able to do this in a time-efficient manner that it could still be profitable.
Okay, thanks, Damian, for that. Also, we have someone asking, can they visit your farm? And we do have someone asking for your contact information.
Okay, I think my contact information is on this slide here. You can email me. You can also share, I have that's my wife's cell phone number. If you want to contact me directly through WhatsApp, I'm 758-727-7009. And visiting the farm the farm is going to be open for visiting as of January 2024. That's our grand opening. But if you're somebody that is local and just want to pass through and chat, we can make an arrangement and talk anytime.
Okay, great. So we do not have any more questions at the time. So I want to say special thanks, Damian, special thanks, Nelson, for this very informative presentation, very practical, very hands-on. And these are definitely information that persons can utilize almost immediately, particularly those who are active farmers, active backyard farmers, you know, doing a little gardening at their home. And so I want to say a special thank you to you, to the both of you. Thank you, Mr. Rush and Mr. Rawlins, for the remarks. And we also have the project manager and the supporting team, Lola, and also my supporting person, Chani, from our Agriculture, Climate and Sustainability Program. And of course, to you, the participants, the information is for you, is to help you with a lot of this, you know, simple approaches that you can implement on your farm. And so we want to thank you for participating. And I do hope that this session was of great value to you and that you will be utilizing what was shared with you today. And so with that, I wish everyone a splendid week ahead, and we do look forward to seeing you soon. And so Before I close, let me just share. We have our next webinar coming up. So that I give you a bit of information on our upcoming webinar. She's there. Yes, Laura, I see that you have your hand up. You could go ahead.
Thank you so much, Nikelia. Damien, I just wanted you to share your WhatsApp number one more time, please.
Okay, it's 758-727-7009.
Thank you kindly.
Okay.
You're very welcome.
Okay, great. So as we have, hi Laura, as we have ended our first session, we do have a second session coming up, and we will be looking at risk management solutions for supply shortages. And I will be sending the link for persons to register. I would have already sent it, but I will send a follow-up link for persons to register. Lola and the team will also be sending for person in the French territory. And for persons on their screen, you could simply scan the QR code there and it will take you to the registration link. So Lola, this is it for us. And so thank you, everyone. And I do wish you a pleasant day. See you till next time.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Merci à tous. Bonne journée.
à tous. Merci beaucoup pour votre présence.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for